Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pull Up with Limbs and Things. My name is Dr. Chanel James, and I'm the owner of Limbs and Things. We are a mobile and telehealth physical therapy practice, and tonight we're talking about how we learn more about occupational therapy, and then we'll talk a little bit about how to unlose yourself with Miss Consuela Marshall. She'll join us in just a moment.
Pull up with limbs and things.
All right, it is Occupational Therapy Month, and we'll talk a little bit about the difference between occupational therapists and physical therapists because a lot of us tend to just not know. So, if you're joining us, we invite you to share this information with someone else, but to also confirm something you know, to challenge something you don't know, and to give you an opportunity to share this information with someone else. So if you are watching tonight, please click in the chat live. If you're catching this on the replay, please click or type replay. All right. She'll be with us in just a moment. Hope you all are having a great Saturday. All right. While we wait for her to join us, Ms. Consuela Marshall, she is from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and she's been an occupational therapist for 30 years in home health. Let's talk about the difference between home health and home-based physical therapy services. So, home health is usually what you see after you have, say, gone into the hospital and you're either in a skilled nursing facility or you have transferred to another facility outside of a hospital before going home. And so they tend to use Medicare Part A benefits. You can even be in your home and having Part A benefits used. But home-based therapy, what Limbs and Things does would be after you have had a period of home health through a Medicare Part A agency because we accept Medicare Part B. So the difference between home health and home-based therapy or mobile services provided on an outpatient basis in your home would be which payer sources used in terms of home health being Part A and Part B with home-based physical therapy services that don't necessarily require that you are homebound. That's one of the defining characteristics of home health. And here's Miss Marshall. It's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
No problem. Okay, so I introduced you a little bit, everybody, about how you're an occupational therapist and you've been one for 30 years in home health settings. But outside of occupational therapy, you've also been an advocate for caregivers.
Yes.
And you are working to help people age in place if they are appropriate to do so. So welcome to Pull Up with Limbs and Things. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm Consuela. I am the founder of Finding a Foothold. And yes, supporting the needs of caregivers has been a growing desire of my heart, having been a therapist in the home health setting. And the great bulk of our efforts are focused on the rehabilitation and training of the patient. And it does include caregivers as well. But there was always this missing component where I felt that the caregivers needed so much more. And with our limited times in the home, there was not always that in-depth diving into what the true issues of caregivers have been. So with that, what's the birth of Finding a Foothold is to continue to support those living with disabilities, but now with increased emphasis on supporting the caregiver in helping them to find more efficient ways of doing what they're already doing, and really showing them ways of how to tailor caregiving to fit their physical limitations and their relational limitations, all the things that are impacted by caregiving. Is really getting caregivers to really see the big picture of caregiving and how to structure it so that they can still enjoy aspects of their life and still give care to their loved ones. With caregiving, life isn't the same. There are a lot of compromises and a lot of things that are going to be different for that season of caregiving. But many caregivers need to realize that there are certain things that you can't afford to lose or put on the back burner for too long. And there are ways to still integrate those things into their life.
That's so true. Okay, so since it's Occupational Therapy Month, let's talk a little bit about your role as an occupational therapist, and just give us like a general definition so that there'll be no confusion.
Yes, I mean that what is OT and PT has always been the great mystery. Whereas PT is easy to figure out, but they're like, what is OT? And April being National Occupational Therapy Month, it is a good time to really reiterate what those differences are. So I like to start by really defining the word occupation. And the word occupation is, what are those things that you need to, want to, or have to do in your life? And that could be a lot of things. And with that definition in mind, it always goes back to functional task in your life. Or functional skills. It can be from infancy. What do infants have to do? They have to learn to sit. They have to learn to crawl. They have to learn to pull to stand. A lot of those different things. And OTs and PTs work on those things. But as you're going through adulthood and having to look at disabilities that impact normal development, occupational therapists look at what are the deficits, what are some things that we can do to overcome those deficits, and we're aiming toward, now, how can we still keep you functional? Because some deficits don't go away. So we're in to teach patients how to do those activities of daily living. Life goes on even with disabilities. So when you think about occupational therapy, I want you to think about those activities like dressing, bathing, toileting, grooming, housekeeping with the IADL. So it's more broader activities outside of your personal body that still have to be done. Going to school for kids, they still have to write some of those things. How do we work on those things? So when you're thinking about function, you think about occupational therapy. But in order to achieve those goals, occupational therapists have to work on strengthening. We have to work on fine motor skills. We have to look at what are some sensory things that are keeping you from processing your environment in order to engage in your environment. So to kick the mystery out of occupation, no, it isn't. Occupational therapy is not just getting a job. It's about the job of life. If you can think about what are the jobs of life that you have to do at every stage of life, from infancy all the way into senior advanced aging, there are things that occupational therapists can teach individuals with bathing, dressing, grooming, toilet, and that whole span of life. So I hope that clears it up for OT. And with that, we collaborate a lot with PT, because if you can't stand and walk, you can't do toileting. So a lot of our goals do overlap. And OTs do work on standing, because we can't stand and get you doing things if we don't overlap in some of those core deficits that we see in our clients. So I hope that clears it up for a lot of you all.
And if you have a question, you can always put it in the chat and we will respond to it. But I think that's important to state, because even in our settings, we're working in someone's home and we might be the only practitioner there. Like for someone, for example, for me, working on getting into the shower, that's a walk-in shower, trying to lift your leg up high enough to do so. But then once they get in, that's all you. and helping them to figure out how they
Yes.
stand and adjust to the shower head and all of those different things, or even providing a device that will help them be more successful in putting on their shoes, all of those things, and cognition part. I found that
Yes. Yes.
occupational therapists do a really good job in that area.
Yes. Exactly. Even if we pull into that other discipline that we are closely knitted to as well, the speech and language pathologists, I think all three disciplines really complement each other.
Absolutely.
And there's ways that we all help make a person better by really allowing us to focus in on what we do well. It's hard to go in and you see these deficits because maybe they have left leg weakness and maybe you can't reconfigure the bathroom. It has to be, you can only get in it from the left angle. Well, I do know leg exercises, but we're so limited in the home that having that communication with the physical therapist and like, what are the things you're doing and what are, these are some things that I'm seeing that's impacting function, and really having that collaboration with the physical therapist that's in the home is really key to seeing patients thrive and meet their goals.
Absolutely. That's so true. And a lot of us would do better if we had all three disciplines, especially for those who are more globally involved.
Right. And yes. And it's, and with healthcare today, it's just getting more and more challenging to coordinate and balance home care. It's been very challenging, especially when you're going through it with a home health agency. Just finding that balance of how to deliver the care that is needed in a way that benefits the patient is very, very difficult. It's very difficult and very challenging because it's very limited in the number of visits under the current way that they calculate things.
That was so nice the way you put that.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a question. What about recreational therapy?
Oh, the recreational therapists, we're not throwing any shade on recreational therapists. They have a good role too. When I was, I have limited interaction with the recreational therapists, and my biggest part in having been introduced to what they do is in my limited time I had on an inpatient rehab setting. Having those recreational therapists really in a more casual way address a lot of those deficits in strength and endurance by getting it out of an exercise mentality into a very fun, engaging exercise. I can really see a person in there just really, really, really batting that ball and doing more fun type recreational activity. It does impact what we're doing in the gym side of it. And I will actually tailor my exercise to say, well, look, I'm not going to focus on those because they're doing a lot of that in recreational therapy. So recreational therapy, unfortunately, you can't take it into the home setting because there's no funding for that. But in the right setting, recreational therapists do play an important role in rehabilitation.
Absolutely. So as a recreational therapist, I try to implement a lot of that in what I do, working with people in their homes, because when you make it fun, people don't even think that it's as tactical for them to do or meeting the goal in a different way. So
that's right.
Definitely fun to do it that way. Okay. So anything else you want to tell us about occupational therapy, especially from the aging adult perspective? Because when you come into their settings, they're most likely to say, I'm not working anymore.
Yes. For me, over time, I really learned the skill of really entering into their world.
Yeah.
Finding out what is important to them. And not really always emphasizing the exercise, although it's a big important part of it. But the truth of the matter is, when we leave homes, not a lot of them do home exercise programs like we would like for them to do them. but I find it's just really getting into their world and seeing what's important to them,
Mm-hmm.
and really looking at what are limitations and really getting them to really accept that some things may not improve much, but we can get them better.
Yes.
Or saying that you may not get back to the way you were doing things, but I do think we can come up with a way that we can make things easier for you and sort of take some of the pressure off of them of feeling like there is only one way to do bathing or one way to do things, and they feel less of a person or less whole in themselves because they feel like their body's letting them down, and they don't, if they don't get to do it, return to a prior level of function, it feels like it's something taken away from them. So
True.
what I've learned to do is just really get in and just look at what are the goals, what, and just getting a rapport with them and getting them to be really honest in the home of like, what are the true issues that what you're having, other people have those same issues, and getting to talk about those issues and getting a trust with them. It really has helped me to help them first see that all is not lost because you're aging, and then sort of helping them to really identify what are some practical goals and what are some ways that we can accomplish those goals in the home.
Absolutely. And those things, I mean, I think that's what we all want, somebody to specifically focus on the things that I need to work on so that I can get better. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that was great. I'm glad we talked about occupational therapy. Let's transition now to talk about caregiving. And
Okay. Yes.
how would you say someone loses themselves as a caregiver? How would you describe that?
Being so grossly involved
Mm-hmm.
in trying to keep what was like it was will cause a caregiver to lose himself. When I'm doing group and one-on-one coaching, the key thing that I want to emphasize is establishing
Mm-hmm.
new normals in the life of your loved one who you're seeing with losses, and making adaptations in how things are done is key to really not getting so lost in caregiving by trying to do so much. That there are, with aging and with debility, with disease processes, things should be adapted or even taken off the table in the way of this is no longer practical to
Mm-hmm.
do this 3 times a day or do this
Change is
every day.
hard.
Say that.
Change
Oh,
is hard.
absolutely. Absolutely. So really getting caregivers to really see the person for what they are right now,
Right.
and really looking at what skills that they still have and
Mm-hmm.
trying to maximize those skills are key. So that's a part of what I do with the coaching. And the other part is really by the time they're calling me or they're in the group coaching, they are pretty burnt out and feeling pretty stressed out. So
Mm-hmm.
really starting with getting them to really back up a couple of steps and start remembering your life prior to caregiving. Let's talk about what you did, who you hung out with, what are
Mm-hmm.
the things that you enjoyed. And
Mm-hmm.
then we want to talk about what are you doing now in those same areas. And there is often a big disconnect
Yep.
that those things and those people who were once in their life and the ones who are currently in their life, the relationships are just tensed in marriages and even with kids
Mm-hmm.
because the pressure is there on the caregiver.
Right. So let's talk about an example of losing yourself. I would say one is the person neglects to go to their own doctor's appointments. They're so engrossed in scheduling appointments for the person they are caregiving that they just
That is it. That is it. You've lost your health. Your body's been telling you little things, or you've gotten the reminders on your phone that this is it's time for that annual checkup on this, and you're saying, "Oh, I'll do it. I'll call them. I'm gonna cancel it. I can't do it right now. I'll give
Mhm.
them a call back later," and that later never happens.
Right.
And it's that slowly losing aspects of your health as you are so in tune on keeping life a certain way for someone, and it's just not sustainable.
Yeah.
And another area that is often is I'm seeing is like parents really not having the time with their children who are growing up. And I'm like to them, you can't get these years back.
No.
Not going to the ball games, not being there in the afternoon and just listening to them and making yourself available to teenagers as they are growing up. And all of your focus is on mom, and mom wants it this way, and mom needs you over there. She doesn't want to leave her house, but you've got to go over there every afternoon, and you've got to go over there every morning before work. Unlosing yourself is about making some hard decisions. It is not about abandoning your loved one at all. I don't advocate that at all. But you have to come to terms with what does your life need to look like in a modified way, and what is feasible for what you can do in modifying and eliminating a lot of wants that your loved one you may not be able to uphold to. And really focusing on your children, focusing on your husband, and just being creative on how to add those little things in there and how to get them on board. Because if they can do some things, it frees you up, and then you're like, okay, now we can do this. So it's all unlosing you in caregiving is how do you structure that plan? And I want to say no one sits down with a blueprint on this. You have to be governed by the things that are currently happening. And as the stress is just the GPS saying you're going down the wrong road.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it.
Yes. And something needs to be modified. You're working too hard, and maybe the home environment is just not set up or conducive to allow for you to continue in that way, because it's taking you 45 minutes to do bathing, when if you had the home set up properly by making little changes and getting equipment, you can probably get that down to 15 minutes. And then bathing, maybe they are used to or accustomed to doing it a bath or shower every day. You know, we would like that, but sometimes we may have to say, let's look at the schedule of that. On every other day, let's look at doing it this way. It can still be a thorough cleaning or a thorough, we know it's not neglect, but it's like there has to be some off days where you are not working so hard and utilizing that time for yourself, some downtime to remember to call somebody back, to remember about the invitations that you can attend. And so it's trying to stay connected to your life.
Absolutely. I think a lot of times we think that when we unloose ourselves that we are taking a step back and the person won't be as well without us. Or that I think I try hard to see that in some of my patients and just telling them there are other resources out there that you can use.
That's right.
To be you.
That's
so
right.
What would you say to help someone who is trying to not lose themselves in caregiving, but has the concern of it not being them?
Yeah, there are certain things that have to be done. It's not like you're going to take a day off of feeding mom. It may take 45 minutes to feed her, but you can't I'm not feeding you today because, It's like, how do you bring in help? How do you look at the things that you cannot modify? And looking at what help is available. What are some resources? And there are not a lot of resources that come without you having to spend funds for them. And just really how can you bundle resources from family members? How can you utilize neighbors? How can you utilize respite whenever you can find it to do those essentials that you can no longer do?
Talk about respite, because everybody doesn't know what that is.
Respite is time away from your loved one. Scheduled times for yourself by having somebody in place to attend to for their needs. And respite could be an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, a whole 24 hours, 8 hours. It can be a whole weekend or a whole week. And those are things that you can build up to. Is respite is time away from caregiving. there are not a lot of free resources out there, but there often are things that trickle in if you can get involved with a foundation. I'm just going to use like Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm.
From time to time, there are these philanthropists that do say, I'm going to give an endowment for $500,000 for respite. And, you know, that can get utilized pretty easily, you know, with depending on, you know, their members. And just, if you're not in these organizations related to your loved one's illness, you don't always see when these opportunities come where they're making allowances for 3-day weekends where someone comes into your home, or someone, you take them to an outside facility where you can get, you know, 3 days away from caregiving. So
yeah, so that's the one I'm familiar with, where people can go, like, say, to a nursing home and get
yes,
break the person's
yes,
checks for
exactly,
for a few days, and then it's kind of like a hotel stay, and then they come back home. So, but that's good. I didn't know about the foundation option, but that's a good thing to do. I think a lot of us,
you know,
we tend to think that those foundations are not ones that we should be a part of, but if they do have
yes,
benefits like that,
they do. You know, and the word of mouth of other caregivers, you just may be on a call and they may say, you know, my church does this.
right?
You know, we have people, you know, that you can get to know. They can come out and say little short periods of times until you get a trust with that person. And they may come out an hour or 2 hours a week. So you can go to the grocery store or go for a walk, or just be in the same home, but in another area of the home, but just like you're just time away. You're just in your room, just lying down because it gives you a break. Just being around other caregivers is it's such a like a synergy that occurs, a synapses of something where there's a bond that just happens between other caregivers, and they share information. They tell about other things that may be available that you don't hear out and about, but you get those information from those intimate connections that you make in some support groups that are free groups, that are illness-based groups.
Now, in addition to what you were saying, in the DC area, there are senior centers, there are other organizations that do exactly what you're talking about. There's Mom's Meals, there's you have that in Louisiana too?
We don't have Mom's Meal, we have Meals on Wheels.
Okay,
I'm trying to plug up my phone that's blinking 10%. So give me 1 second.
No problem. So those types of things, we definitely want to make sure if you're in need of those, that you sign up for them. Have you found that social workers are also a good resource in terms of finding the necessary respite avenues?
They can be, yes. You know, in the home setting, the privy to having those ancillary support systems have been few and far between, just because of the funding in the home health setting. But I would challenge caregivers to really be armed with questions when you are at a hospital setting, when you're at the doctor's office, and really asking those questions and utilizing those resources in a hospital. When you have access to a social worker, they are a great resource. And even with like hospice agencies that have social workers, utilizing them, they are a big help. But being in a home health setting, I just have not had that privilege of having one accessible to me that could help with the home health. And that's really some of the reason why I'm founded Finding a Foothold, is to bridge that gap. Just amassing a big list of resources that I run across. Even today, I went to a function and they had vendors set up for children. And I'm walking around and, you know, asking where does this extend beyond pediatrics? And you're like, yes, we provide these services to anyone in need. And just trying to get resources that I can pass on to people in my community that could give them support in caring for their loved one.
That's awesome. I think we have to be in seeing people who are in their homes. We have to be well versed with resources to provide them because they don't necessarily get access to them as readily as we do.
Right. Correct.
So if we want to connect with you, you mentioned finding a foothold. That's how I found you on Instagram. And
yes,
I'm so glad
yeah.
So if you want to connect with Ms. Marshall, her website is linktree/finding a foothold, or you can find her on social media at Finding a Foothold. If you have a question, you're watching, and something strikes up with you in terms of caregiving or occupational therapy, you can put a comment in the chat and we will answer it. Yeah. So I do have another. Go ahead.
Just to clarify on how to know more about me, and you just go into findingafoothold.com, and it will give you a lot of this. That's the hub where you can see about my podcast, a blog, and group coaching services that I offer online.
You got it. Okay, I fixed it. There we go. Okay, findingafoothold.com to connect with you. Okay, so what about the person who is receiving caregiving and they're a little apprehensive to taking the advice or taking the back step that the person wants to take? What would you say?
For that, the patient, they are. Can reword that question one more time.
The person who is resistant to having the person take a step back from them because they need the time for themselves. What would you say is a good way to segue that conversation with them so that they'll be a little bit more receptive?
Let me make sure I understand you. That person is very needy, meaning they want only that daughter or their son to be their caregiver.
Yeah.
I do find that even with the most demanding of parents, they have a heart for their child. And when a child can appeal to that and say, Mom or Dad, I need this for me. And really saying the why, like what are the things that they are experiencing? Like, Mom, I love caring for you, but when I don't get a break, I start to have headaches. I'm having issues with my back. Or if it's even emotional or like mental things that start to happen, then you can say, I'm not in a good place when I don't get time away. And letting them know the why really sort of softens that hard shell of that person that just wants that person. And then I would think going into a practical part of it and saying, but I'm going to make sure everything is okay for you. Let's go through the list of the things. What are the routines? And look, this conversation looks different, depending on that person's cognitive status. Absolutely. Like if you have someone who's like cognitively intact, but have physical needs, you can acknowledge their concerns. I know you're concerned because you don't think that someone can transfer you. Somebody can do this, and what you want to do is start in little steps. You don't want to just say, I found respite, I'm going for 2 weeks. That's probably not the way to do it. That's just like anxiety provoking. It's like, it's high anxiety there. It's just taking it slow with them. And even to the point, if someone's willing to come along and help you in the home and you're not sure if they understand the need level, just being there and slowly getting them acclimated. And then once they're there, you can even tell your loved one, I'm stepping away. And stepping away is that you're sitting out in your car, or you're sitting out in the driveway, or you're under a tree in the backyard.
Uh-huh.
But you're honestly saying you stepped away and allowing that person to just get comfortable with your loved one and in their care. So, for that resistant person, you want to just calm their fears a little bit, because, as a caregiver, we can always think uh, about our needs on
Mm-hmm.
one side of it. More often we think about their needs a lot, but there's another side of it. It's like putting yourself into their shoes and saying, what's going on here? So
Right.
calming some of their fears
Mm-hmm.
by doing it gradually, and then really getting them involved in the plan of what is going to occur while you're gone. Like,
Yeah.
these are the things that are going to take place. Like, look, she's not going to bathe you, because that takes a blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
That's a we're only going to stay with safe things,
Mm-hmm.
and actually letting that, even making lists and sort of giving that person some control over
Right.
how
Mm-hmm.
things are going to get played out. It's sort of makes them the one in charge, and you can give them some confidence that things
Absolutely.
are going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
When we're bringing in a dementia diagnosis, then it becomes you don't have these conversations, but
Right.
you definitely want to make sure that you're communicating with the person who's stepping in, the needs that are there, and definitely being a little bit more delicate in making that happen and making that connection with someone that can come in and assist with their care.
Absolutely. You hit a lot of the points I was thinking about, especially giving the person a little bit of autonomy and saying what they prefer if they are able to do so. Because I think that's
Exactly.
important. They feel like, a sense of their independence is gone. And so they have to give, the key away.
Yes. One thing that I have seen this often, it actually becomes a good thing when that person connects with someone else. There's just certain things you don't think to talk to your daughter about.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain things your daughter doesn't think to ask, because she knows you and she doesn't have to go down memory lane with you. When you find someone who can really connect to that parent, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, well, tell me, Miss Jones, um, where'd you go to school? What did
Mm-hmm.
you do? And what did you do for a living? And, and you get them to talk, and then they get, they're like, oh, well, look, I like to fish too. And then you get these conversations going on that daughter don't have time to talk about fishing. She's just like, I'm trying to get the job done and go on to the next task. So
Right.
it really becomes a good social thing that can take place when you can get like maybe even a consistent person to come in and care for your loved one, that you can see that, what, there's more to life, there's more to living, there's more to be enjoyed than just looking at your daughter and only it being your son being involved in your care.
Right. I think that's really important, the things that you've been saying, because a lot of times we don't take the time when we're too close.
Yes.
Someone who is not as close will.
Yes. Mhm.
Yep. Okay. If you're watching, you have a comment. We'll give you a little time to put it in there. And while people could possibly be writing a comment, you want to give us a final thought about occupational therapy, as well as how to not lose yourself in caregiving.
Yes. Mhm. Occupational therapy is a very diverse field,
Hmm.
and all centered on the functional needs of that person
Hmm.
and of that caregiver, by taking into consideration that caregiver's limitations in their life. And with that, as a caregiver, it's easy to think that doing more is the only way to show that you love that person,
Hmm.
when actually doing more it just causes more stress, more fatigue,
Hmm.
and it can actually turn you into somebody that you don't want to be, or you don't like to be, just because of this amount of stress. So that part of losing you, it could also be just losing the personality of who you were, the one that was so excited about that opportunity to take care of mom. You knew in your heart that, yeah, I'm taking care of my mom if she ever needs me. But you're standing here or listening today and you are so frustrated. You're even like, I don't even know why I signed up for this. This is the hardest thing. And do I even like her anymore? Do I even like myself? Because you can really become somebody that you're not even proud of. And that is just due to doing too much. The key to being a successful caregiver is to really stay connected to your life. You've got to structure caregiving that you really identify what are the true needs of your loved one and what are just routines and habits and wants. You've got to shake that bag up a little bit and take another look at it and say, what are the essentials? Now, yes, we want to lavish stuff and do a little extra for our parents. We want to do that. But we have to do it in the context of keeping you whole as well.
Right.
And in that same amount of time that you're doing what you're doing, you actually can do less and then do more for yourself. So finding those easier, safer ways by learning proper techniques and learning how to set limits and learning how to set up the environment is the key to really successful caregiving and how to stay connected to your life.
Awesome. I think that was a wonderful way to wrap it up. And happy Occupational Therapy Month to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining Pull Up with Limbs and Things.
Oh, I'm honored. And likewise, I've seen you on social media from the beginning and really have enjoyed your content.
Same here. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you again, Ms. Marshall.
You're welcome, Ms.